The space station Nexus Prime floated in the dark between 3 star systems. It was neutral ground, a place where different species could meet without starting wars. Today, humans had come to talk business with the galactic hegemony. Hannah walked through the metal corridors carrying a simple briefcase. She wore a plain grey suit that made her look small and ordinary. Her black hair was pulled back in a neat bun. She moved quietly, like someone who did not want to cause trouble. Behind her, Ambassador Park Daeho talked with the other human delegates. His voice was calm and professional. Remember, we need those mining rights. The colonies are running low on rare metals. This deal could save millions of lives. The hegemony knows we're desperate, said Kim Taeman, the security chief. He was a big man with worried eyes. They'll try to take advantage. Choi Soo-jin, the cultural expert, nodded. The reptilian species values strength above all else. They see diplomacy as weakness. Hannah said nothing. She just listened and took notes in her small tablet. The others were used to this. Hannah never spoke much during meetings. She was just the assistant who brought tea and organized papers. They reached the conference room. The doors opened with a soft hiss. The aliens were already waiting inside. Warlord Vexstar sat at the far end of a long metal table. He was huge, even sitting down. His scales were dark green with black patterns. Sharp teeth showed when he smiled, which looked more like a threat than friendliness. His eyes were yellow and cold, like a snake's. Around him sat other members of the hegemony. All were reptilian, all were big. All looked like they could tear a human in half without trying. But the worst was Catherine Vexstar's son. He stood near his father's chair, young and arrogant. His scales were brighter than the others, showing his high status. He wore military decorations on his chest. His claws were polished and sharp. So, Vexstar's voice was deep and rough. The humans have finally arrived. Small you all look. The other aliens laughed. It was not a nice sound. Ambassador Park stepped forward with a diplomatic smile. Warlord Vexstar, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. We hope to reach an agreement that benefits both our peoples. Benefits? Catherine spoke up, his voice full of mockery. What could you soft creatures possibly offer us? Hannah quietly took her seat at the side of the table. She opened her briefcase and pulled out papers and a tea set. The aliens watched her with amusement. Look at that one. General Mordok pointed at Hannah with a clawed finger. She's like a servant. Does she even speak? More laughter filled the room. Hannah began pouring tea into small cups. Her hands were steady. Her face showed no emotion. She offered the first cup to Ambassador Park, then moved around the table. When she reached the alien side, Catherine blocked her path. I don't drink human liquids, he said loudly. Who knows what weakness it might cause? The aliens found this very funny. Hannah simply nodded and stepped back. She returned to her seat and began arranging papers. Now then, Ambassador Park tried to regain control of the meeting. We're here to discuss mining rights in the Kepler sector. Our analysis shows the asteroid fields contain your analysis. Vexstar interrupted. Humans have been in space. For what? 100 years. We have ruled these systems for 1,000 years. What could you possibly know that we don't? Park stayed calm. We have new scanning technology. Our deep space probes have found rich deposits of rare elements that your equipment might have missed. Impossible, Catherine snorted. Human technology is primitive. Everyone knows this. Hannah made a note in her tablet. The sound of her stylus was the only noise for a moment. What is she writing? Catherine demanded. Is the little secretary taking down our words? I'm recording the meeting for our records, Hannah said quietly. It was the first time she had spoken. Her voice was soft and polite. The aliens stared at her. Then Catherine laughed. It speaks, and so quietly. Are all human females this timid? Human females serve many roles in our society, Ambassador Park said carefully. Ms. Lee is a valued member of our diplomatic team. Valued? General Mordok leaned forward. For what? Making tea? In our culture, Such weakness would not be tolerated. Hannah continued writing. She seemed to be paying no attention to the insults. For the next 2 hours, the meeting went badly. Every time the humans tried to present their proposal, the aliens interrupted with jokes and threats. They called humans soft, weak, and pathetic. They said human technology was toys compared to hegemony weapons. Through it all, Hannah sat quietly. She poured more tea. She organized documents. She took notes. When aliens made particularly cruel comments, she showed no reaction at all. Perhaps we should break for today, Ambassador Park finally said. The meeting was going nowhere. Yes. Vexstar agreed with a cold smile. We need time to decide if humans are even worth talking to. As the delegates prepared to leave, Kethrin walked over to Hannah's side of the table. He stood very close, using his size to intimidate her. Tell me, little human, he said in a low voice, do you ever fight? Or do you just sit and serve, like a good pet? Hannah looked up at him. For just a moment, something flickered in her dark eyes. But it was gone so fast that no one else noticed. I serve my people as needed, she said simply. Kethrin laughed and walked away. The humans gathered there. Things left the conference room. In the corridor outside, Kim Taemin shook his head angrily. This is hopeless. They're not here to negotiate. They just want to humiliate us. We have to keep trying, Park said. Too much depends on this. Choi Soo-jin looked worried. Their behavior toward Hannah was completely inappropriate. In their culture, such disrespect usually means they're planning violence. Hannah closed her briefcase with a soft click. The meeting was very informative, she said quietly. I learned a lot about their military structure and social hierarchy. The others looked at her strangely. She had seemed to be ignoring the aliens' behavior completely. Tomorrow will be interesting, Hannah added, almost to herself as they walked. Back to their quarters, none of the humans noticed that Hannah had filled 12 pages of notes. And none of those notes were about mining rights or trade agreements. They were detailed observations about hegemony combat doctrine, military ranks, and the personal fighting style of Kethrin, heir to the bloodline. The soft diplomat was preparing for war. The second day of talks began worse than the first. Kethron arrived at the conference room wearing full military armor instead of diplomatic clothes. The metal plates were polished to shine like mirrors. War medals covered his chest. A ceremonial sword hung at his side. Impressive display, Ambassador Park said, trying to stay polite. Is there a special occasion? Every day is special when you might meet enemies. Kethrin replied with a sharp smile. His yellow eyes focused on Hannah as she quietly set up her papers. Some enemies are more pathetic than others. Hannah arranged her teacups without looking up. She wore the same simple grey suit as yesterday. Next to the armored aliens, she looked even smaller and more fragile. Let's continue our discussion about the mining rights, Park said, opening his folder. Wait, Warlord Vexstar raised one clawed hand. First, I want to understand something. Why do humans bring females to important meetings? The question made the room uncomfortable. Kim Taemin shifted in his seat. Choi Soo-jin frowned. In human society, gender doesn't determine a person's abilities, Park explained carefully. Ms. Lee is here because of her skills, not her gender. The aliens found this hilarious. Their laughter echoed off the metal walls. Skills, General? Mordok wiped tears from his reptilian eyes. What skills? Tea making. Hannah poured hot water into the teapot. Her movements were calm and precise, like she had done this 1,000 times before. In our culture, Kethrin stood and walked around the table. Females stay home. They care for eggs and clean nests. They don't pretend to be warriors or diplomats. He stopped directly behind Hannah's chair. She could feel his hot breath on her neck. Tell me, little human, he whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. What do you do when you're not serving tea? Do you clean floors? Wash clothes? Hannah's hand paused for just a second as she poured tea. Then she continued as if nothing had happened. I do whatever my job requires, she said softly. Your job, Catherine laughed. Your job is to be decoration. Pretty wallpaper to make the males feel important. The other aliens joined in the cruel laughter. But Park had enough. That's completely inappropriate, he said firmly. Misley deserves respect. Respect. Vextar's voice turned dangerous. Respect is earned through strength. What strength has this creature shown? For the next hour, the meeting became a nightmare. Every time Hannah moved, the aliens made comments. When she took notes, they mocked her handwriting. When she poured tea, they called her a servant. The worst moment came when Catherine accidentally knocked over his water glass. The liquid spilled across Hannah's carefully organized papers. "Oh no," he said with fake concern. "How clumsy of me." The aliens watched eagerly to see what Hannah would do. Would she cry, get angry, run away? Instead, she calmly picked up the wet papers. She used a cloth to dry them off. She reorganized everything neatly. Her face showed no emotion at all. "No problem," she said quietly. "Accidents happen." The aliens seemed almost disappointed. They wanted a reaction. They wanted to see her breakdown. "Amazing," Catherine said to his father. "It's like a machine. No feelings, no pride, no spirit." "Perhaps that's why humans are so weak," Mordok suggested. "They have no fire inside them." During the lunch break, the humans gathered in their private room. Kim Taman was furious. "This is intolerable," he paced back and forth. "They're not even pretending to negotiate. They're just bullying us." "Especially targeting Hannah," Choi Soo-jin added. "It's deliberate psychological warfare." Park looked tired. "We can't give up. The colonies need those mining rights. Without rare metals, our terraforming projects will fail." Hannah sat by the window, looking out at the stars. She seemed completely calm. "How are you handling this?" Park asked her gently. "I'm learning a lot," she replied. "Catherine favors his right side when he moves. He's proud of his sword, but never checks his left flank. General Mordok has old injuries in his leg joints. Warlord Vextar's armor has a weak point at the neck connection." The others stared at her. "Why are you noticing things like that?" Kim asked. "Professional habit," Hannah said simply. The afternoon session was even worse. The aliens had clearly decided to push harder. They wanted to break human spirit completely. Catherine brought a weapon to the table. It was a long metal rod with spikes on the end. He placed it where everyone could see it. "This is a pain stick," he explained cheerfully. "We use it to train disobedient slaves, very effective." He picked up the weapon and activated it. Electricity crackled between the spikes. "I wonder," he mused, pointing it toward Hannah, "how many seconds a soft human could endure this before begging for mercy." Hannah continued taking notes. She didn't even look at the weapon. "Perhaps we should find out," Mordok suggested with an evil grin. "That would be torture," Park said firmly. "We're here under diplomatic protection." "Diplomatic protection?" Vextar laughed. "For insects, I think not." The tension in the room became thick as smoke. Kim Taman's hand moved toward his concealed weapon. Choi Soo-jin looked ready to run, but Hannah just kept writing. Her stylus moved steadily across her tablet. "Look at her," Catherine said with disgust. "Even facing death, she shows nothing. Fear, no anger, no pride. It's like threatening a piece of furniture." He walked closer to her chair. The paint stick crackled with electricity. "I could hurt you right now," he whispered in her ear. "I could make you scream. Your male protectors couldn't stop me." Hannah finally looked up from her notes. For a brief moment, her dark eyes met Catherine's yellow ones. "That would be unwise," she said very quietly. Something in her voice made Catherine step back. Just for a second, he looked uncertain. Then the moment passed. He laughed and returned to his seat. "Did you hear that? The mouse thinks it can threaten the dragon." But General Mordok had seen that moment too. He looked at Hannah with new interest. "Tell me, little human," Mordok said slowly, "what did you do before becoming a diplomat?" Hannah's stylus paused over her tablet. "I worked for the government," she said, after a moment. "Doing what?" "Various things. The vague answer seemed to satisfy Murdoch, but he kept watching her carefully. As the day ended, Catherine made one final announcement. Tomorrow, we will have a special dinner. A feast, to celebrate our new, friendship, with humanity. I do hope everyone will attend. Especially our quiet little tea server. His smile was full of sharp teeth. After the aliens left, Park shook his head sadly. They're planning something. Tomorrow will be even worse. Hannah packed her briefcase carefully. Her notes now filled 23 pages. Combat assessments, weakness analysis, tactical observations. Yes, she agreed quietly. Tomorrow will be very different. None of her colleagues noticed that she had stopped writing about diplomacy entirely. Every note was now focused on one thing: how to kill reptilian warriors in close combat. The soft diplomat was almost ready. The third day brought no formal meeting. Instead, the aliens invited the humans to a celebration feast in the station's grand dining hall. Ambassador Park knew it was a trap, but they had no choice. Refusing would end all hope of getting the mining rights. Hannah dressed the same as always. Grey suit, neat hair, simple briefcase. She looked like she was going to a normal business meeting, not walking into danger. Are you sure about this? Kim Taemin asked as they walked to the dining hall. His hand stayed near his hidden weapon. They're planning something bad. We have to try, Park replied, but his voice was tight with worry. The dining hall was huge, with a high ceiling covered in alien artwork. Long tables formed a square around an open space in the middle. Hundreds of reptilian guests filled the seats, all watching the humans enter. Warlord Vexstar sat at the head table on a throne-like chair. He wore his finest armor, black metal decorated with gold. Kethron stood beside him in full military dress. His sword hung at his side, and his claws were painted red for the occasion. Welcome, honored guests. Vexstar's voice boomed across the hall. Please, sit anywhere you like. The humans took seats at a small table near the center. Immediately, servers brought plates of strange alien food. The meat was raw and bloody. The vegetables looked like purple fungus. Panna sat quietly and took small bites. She showed no disgust, even though the food was clearly not meant for humans. Look how she eats, Catherine announced loudly. Like a little bird. Tiny bites, so careful. So weak. Laughter rippled through the hall. Hundreds of alien eyes focused on Hannah. In our culture, General Murdoch called out, warriors eat with passion. They tear into their food like they tear into their enemies. He demonstrated by ripping apart a chunk of raw meat with his claws and teeth. Blood dripped down his chin. Perhaps humans are not warriors at all, suggested another alien voice. No, Kethron stood up, his voice carrying easily through the hall. They are prey animals. Look at them. Small, soft, quiet. They exist to be hunted by real predators. The crowd agreed with roars and hisses. The sound was terrifying. Ambassador Park tried to stay diplomatic. Our species may be different, but we share common goals of peace and prosperity. Peace, Vexstar's laugh was like rocks grinding together. There is no peace in the universe. There is only the strong and the food they eat. The humans don't understand this. Catherine walked around the tables as he spoke. They think words can replace strength. They think politeness can stop claws and teeth. He stopped directly behind Hannah's chair again. It was becoming his favorite intimidation tactic. This one especially. He put his clawed hand on the back of her chair. 3 days of meetings, and she has said perhaps 20 words total. Is she mute, stupid, or just too terrified to speak? Hannah continued eating her small bites of alien food. She seemed to be completely ignoring him. I asked you a question. Catherine's voice turned dangerous. I heard you, Hannah said quietly, not looking up from her plate. Then answer me. I don't see a question that requires an answer. The hall went silent. No one had expected the quiet. Human to show even that much backbone. Catherine's eyes flashed with anger. You dare to mock me? I'm eating dinner, Hannah replied calmly. Same as everyone else. The young alien's face twisted with rage. He grabbed the back of Hannah's chair and spun it around so she faced him. "Look at me when I speak to you, prey animal." For the first time in 3 days, Hannah looked directly at Catherine. Her dark eyes met his yellow ones without fear or submission. The contact lasted only a moment, but something passed between them that made the alien prince step backward. "Better," he said, trying to recover his confidence. "At least you can look at your betters." He returned to his father's side, but the crowd had noticed his moment of uncertainty. Whispers began spreading through the hall. Warlord Vextar decided to take control. He stood up, and his massive presence commanded immediate attention. "Friends," he announced, "we have tolerated these humans for 3 days. We have listened to their pathetic requests. We have watched their weakness and cowardice." The crowd growled approval. "But I have reached a decision. Humanity is not worthy of partnership with the hegemony. They are too soft, too weak, too pathetic to deserve the mining rights they seek." Ambassador Park jumped to his feet. "Warlord, please reconsider. We can offer technology, trade agreements, mutual defense pacts." "Silence!" Vexter roared. "We will take what we want from your territories. Your colonies will submit, or be destroyed. Your fleets will surrender, or be scattered. This is the law of the strong." Kim Taemin reached for his weapon, but Park grabbed his arm. "Starting a fight here would get them all killed." However, Vextar continued, his voice becoming sly. "Our laws do provide one alternative. An ancient right that even prey species may invoke." Kethron grinned, understanding his father's plan. "Trial by combat," the warlord announced. "Single combat between champions to settle disputes. If any human thinks they can face a warrior of the Bloodline, they may challenge for the right to negotiate." The hall erupted in excitement. This was entertainment they hadn't expected. "Of course," Kethron stepped forward, "I will represent the hegemony. I am trained in 17 forms of combat. I have killed 43 enemies in personal battle. I carry the weapons of my ancestors and the honor of my bloodline." He drew his ceremonial sword. The blade gleamed under the lights. "Which of you, soft creatures, thinks they can face me?" The question hung in the air like poison. The humans knew it was hopeless. Even Kim, their biggest and strongest, would be torn apart by Kethron. The alien was twice the size of any human, covered in natural armor, armed with claws and teeth. "No volunteers," Catherine mocked. "How disappointing. I was hoping for at least a few minutes of entertainment before I killed one of you." Ambassador Park looked sick. This had been the trap all along. Publicly humiliate humanity by showing their cowardice, then take what they wanted by force. "Typical humans," General Mordok called out. "All talk, no courage." "Perhaps we should choose one for them," suggested another alien. "The female would be amusing to watch die." Hundreds of reptilian eyes turned toward Hannah. She sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap. "Yes," Catherine's grin became savage. "The quiet little tea server. Let's see if she can fight as well as she can pour hot water." The crowd loved this idea. They began chanting for blood. "What do you say, little human?" Catherine pointed his sword at Hannah. "Will you die with honor, or shall I drag you into the combat circle like the coward you are?" The chanting grew louder. The aliens wanted violence, wanted to see human blood spilled on their floor. In the middle of the chaos, Hannah slowly closed her napkin and placed it beside her plate. She stood up, her movement quiet but somehow commanding attention. The hall gradually fell silent as hundreds of predators watched their prey. Hannah looked around the room once, taking in all the expectant faces. Then she looked directly at Catherine, heir to the bloodline, trained killer, champion of the hegemony. "I accept," she said simply. The silence that followed was complete. Even the air recycling systems seemed to pause. Then, the hall exploded into chaos. Aliens roared with laughter and disbelief. Some shouted bets on how quickly she would die. Others called for the combat to begin immediately. But in the center of the storm, Kethron stared at the small human woman who had just volunteered to fight him to the death. For reasons he couldn't understand, he was no longer smiling. The chaos in the dining hall slowly died down as everyone realized what had just happened. The small, quiet human diplomat had actually accepted a death challenge from the hegemony's greatest young warrior, Kethron. Recovered from his shock first, his confusion turned into cruel delight. Did everyone hear that? He shouted to the crowd. The little mouse thinks she can fight the dragon. The aliens roared with laughter again. Some were already making bets on how many seconds Hannah would survive. This is madness, Ambassador Park whispered urgently to Hannah. You can't possibly. The challenge has been accepted. Warlord Vexstar interrupted, his voice booming across the hall. According to ancient law, it cannot be withdrawn. The combat will take place immediately. Kim Taemin grabbed Hannah's arm. This is suicide. He'll tear you apart. Hannah gently removed his hand. Thank you for your concern, she said quietly. But I know what I'm doing. No you don't, Choi Soo-jin pleaded. Look at him, he's twice your size. He has claws, fangs, armor. You're just human, Hannah finished for her. The word hung in the air strangely. Something in the way she said it made the nearby aliens stop laughing. Come then, little prey, Kethron gestured toward a door at the far end of the hall. Let us go to the combat arena. I promise to make your death quick, if you beg properly. The entire crowd began moving toward the arena. It was a large circular room with a sandy floor and high walls. Galleries surrounded the fighting space so hundreds of spectators could watch. Bright lights made everything visible that as they walked, Kethron couldn't resist bragging to anyone who would listen. I began combat training when I was 5 years old, he announced loudly. I have studied every fighting style known to the hegemony. I have killed in single combat on 12 different worlds. He drew his sword and swung it in complex patterns, showing off his skill. The blade whistled through the air. I have broken the bones of enemies twice my size. I have torn the throats of beasts that could crush vehicles. I am the heir to a bloodline of warriors stretching back 1,000 years. The aliens cheered every boast. They were getting excited for the show. Meanwhile, Hannah walked silently beside her worried colleagues. She had left her briefcase behind. Carrying only her simple tablet, she still wore her gray business suit and flat shoes. Next to the armored, weapon-carrying aliens, she looked like a child who had wandered into the wrong place. Please, Park tried one more time as they reached the arena entrance. Let me fight instead. Or Kim, anyone but you. This was always going to happen, Hannah replied calmly. Better now than later. What do you mean? But they had reached the arena, and Hannah didn't answer. The crowd poured into the galleries, filling every seat. The noise was incredible. Roars, hisses, and alien voices placing bets on the fight. Most bets were about how Kethron would kill her. Very few were about whether she would survive at all. In the center of the sandy floor, Kethron performed a ritual preparation. He removed his decorative armor and put on fighting gear. Lighter, more flexible, but still protecting vital areas. He practiced sword movements, showing his speed and skill. Look at those reflexes, General Mordok commented to Vexstar. The human won't even see the blow that kills her. It's almost cruel, Vexstar replied, but he was smiling. Still, it will teach their species about the price of weakness. On the other side of the arena, Hannah stood quietly. She had removed her suit jacket, revealing a simple white shirt underneath. She took off her shoes and placed them neatly beside the wall. Her movements were calm and precise. Shouldn't she have weapons? Asked a confused alien voice. Humans don't carry weapons, another replied. They're too civilized for such things. This caused more laughter. Kim Taemin leaned over the gallery railing. Hannah, take my knife at least. Take something. She looked up at him and shook her head. I have everything I need. Kethron finished his preparations and walked to the center of the arena. His sword gleamed under the lights. His claws were extended. His muscles rippled under his scaled skin. Are you ready to die, little human? He called across the sand. Hannah walked slowly toward the center. With each step, something strange began to happen. Her posture changed slightly. Her movements became more fluid. The nervous energy that had seemed like fear began to look like something else entirely. She stopped 10 feet away from Catherine and looked at him directly. "I should tell you something," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the arena despite being quiet. "What's that, pray?" "My name is Lee Hannah. I am a diplomatic attached to the human colonial government." She paused. "That is my current job." Something in her tone made the crowd lean forward to hear better. "Before this, I was a senior operative for colonial intelligence. Before that, I was a combat instructor for special forces. Before that, I was a sergeant major in the colonial Marines." The arena was getting quieter. "I have served in combat operations on 23 worlds. I hold expert certifications in hand-to-hand combat, blade work, firearms, explosives, and psychological warfare. I have killed 140 enemies in direct combat." Now the arena was completely silent. "I volunteered for this diplomatic mission because someone needed to assess hegemony military capabilities. For 3 days, I have been studying your fighting techniques, your weaknesses, and your tactical thinking." Catherine's confident smile was starting to fade. "I have been called many things during my career: deadly, ruthless, the ghost of Kepler Station. But never, until this week, has anyone called me soft." She took one step closer to him. "That was a mistake." The change in her was visible now. The quiet diplomat was gone. In her place stood someone who moved like a predator, whose eyes calculated distances and angles, whose very presence radiated controlled violence. "I am going to hurt you now," she said simply. "I am going to break things that will never heal properly. I am going to end your military career and your status as heir to anything." Catherine tried to recover his confidence. "Big words from a little mouse. Let's see if, and when, I am done with you," Hannah continued, as if he hadn't spoken. "I am going to sit back down at the negotiating table. Your father will give us everything we asked for, and you will never, ever call a human soft again." The arena was so quiet that everyone could hear Catherine's breathing getting faster. "Last chance," Hannah said. "Yield now, and I'll only break one arm." Catherine's fear turned to rage. How dare this tiny creature threaten him? He was the heir to the bloodline. He was a trained killer. "I'll tear your head off." He roared and charged forward with his sword raised. The crowd erupted in cheers and screams. But as Catherine rushed toward her, something impossible happened. "Lee," Hannah smiled. It was not a nice smile. What happened next lasted exactly 3 seconds and changed everything. Catherine charged across the sandy arena floor like a monster from nightmares. His sword was raised high, his claws extended, his fangs showing in a snarl of rage. He was twice Hannah's weight, covered in muscle and natural armor, armed with weapons that could cut through steel. The crowd was on its feet. Screaming for blood, Hannah stood perfectly still until the last possible moment, then she moved. Not frantically or desperately, but with the smooth precision of someone who had done this many times before. As Catherine's sword came down toward her head, she stepped slightly to the left. The blade missed her by inches, so close it cut a few strands of her black hair. But Hannah was already inside his guard. Her left hand caught his sword arm at the wrist. Her right hand grabbed his elbow. In one fluid motion, she used his own charging momentum against him, pulling his arm down while driving her knee upward. The sound of Catherine's arm breaking echoed through the arena like a gunshot. Crack! The heir to the bloodline screamed. His sword fell from nerveless fingers and clattered on the sand. But Hannah wasn't finished. As he stumbled forward in pain and shock, she shifted her grip to his throat and applied pressure to a specific nerve cluster. Catherine's eyes rolled back, and he dropped to the ground unconscious. The entire fight had taken 3 seconds. The arena fell completely silent. Thousands of alien spectators stared in shock at the impossible scene before them. Their greatest young warrior, trained from birth to kill, lay motionless on the sand. His sword arm bent at an unnatural angle. His military career ended. his status as heir destroyed. And standing over him was the small human diplomat they had. Called Soft Dot, Hannah looked down at Catherine's unconscious form. Then she picked up his dropped sword and examined it professionally. Poorly balanced, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The weight distribution is wrong for combat. This weapon was made for ceremony, not fighting. She tossed the sword aside dismissively. The sound of metal hitting sand seemed to wake the crowd from their trance. Confused muttering began spreading through the galleries. Impossible, someone whispered. How did she? That can't be real. Hannah walked calmly to where she had left her shoes. She sat down and began putting them back on, as if nothing important had happened. Warlord Vextar stood frozen in his gallery seat. His mouth was open in shock. His son, his heir, his pride and joy, lay broken on the arena floor, defeated by a creature he had dismissed as harmless. Medical team to the arena, Hannah called up to the galleries. Her voice was calm and professional. The patient has a compound fracture of the right radius and ulna, possible nerve damage. He'll need surgery if you want him to use that arm again. General Murdoch leaned over to Vextar. How is this possible? Vextar couldn't answer. His entire worldview had just collapsed. Down in the arena, alien medics rushed to tend to Catherine. They moved carefully, afraid to get too close to Hannah. She watched them work with the detached interest of a professional. Apply pressure there, she advised one medic. The bone fragments are pressing on the nerve bundle. If you don't stabilize it quickly, he'll lose feeling in 3 fingers permanently. The medic followed her instructions without thinking. Ambassador Park and the other humans stared down from their gallery in amazement. They had known Hannah was former military, but this was something else entirely. As the medics carried Catherine away on a stretcher, Hannah straightened her shirt and picked up her tablet. She made a few notes, then looked up at Warlord Vextar. The challenge is concluded, she said simply. According to your laws, humanity has won the right to negotiate. Shall we return to the conference room to discuss the mining rights? The question hung in the air like a blade. Vextar slowly stood up. His hands were shaking slightly. You destroyed my son. I defeated him in single combat according to your challenge, Hannah corrected. He's alive and will recover. With proper medical care and physical therapy, he might even regain 70% use of that arm. 70%. The nerve damage was necessary to end the fight quickly. I could have killed him instead. The casual way she said it made several aliens step backward. Who are you? Vextar demanded. Hannah checked her tablet and made another note. I told you, Lee Hannah, diplomatic attaché. Though my previous job was Senior Operations Specialist, Human Colonial Marines, Special Actions Division. She looked up at the gallery full of stunned aliens. My unit was responsible for training human soldiers to fight superior alien forces. We studied every known species in the galaxy. We learned your strengths, your weaknesses, your fighting styles, your cultural blind spots. Her voice remained calm and polite, like she was discussing the weather. Humans are physically weaker than most species, so we became very good at other things. Strategy, precision, using enemy strengths against them. We learned that the bigger they are, the harder they fall. She gestured toward the spot where Catherine had been lying. Your son is a typical hegemony. Warrior, strong, aggressive, proud, but predictable. He telegraphed every move. He relied on intimidation instead of technique. He assumed physical superiority meant victory. General Murdoch found his voice. But you seemed so weak, so helpless. That was the point. Hannah smiled slightly. You saw what you expected to see. A soft diplomat who could be bullied and dismissed. It never occurred to you that humans might send one of their most dangerous operatives disguised as their most harmless. The truth hit the aliens like a physical blow. They had been played from the very beginning. 3 days of negotiations, Vextar said slowly. You were studying us the entire time, correct? Learning your hierarchy, your decision-making process, your military protocols. determining which of you was the real threat and how to neutralize him with minimum effort. She put her tablet in her pocket. My mission was to assess whether the hegemony could be reasoned with diplomatically, or whether other methods would be necessary. You have provided that assessment. The implication was clear. If diplomacy failed, the humans had other options. Deadlier options. Warlord Vextar looked around his galleries full of shaken warriors. His son was crippled. His reputation was shattered. His enemies would hear about this humiliation within hours. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. Hannah picked up her suit jacket and put it back on, transforming herself back into the quiet diplomat. "The same thing we wanted 3 days ago. Mining rights in the Kepler sector. Fair trade agreements. Mutual non-aggression pacts." She walked toward the arena exit, then paused. "The difference is, now you understand the cost of refusing." As she left the arena, the aliens remained in stunned silence. Finally, one voice spoke up from the galleries. "Perhaps we should hear their full proposal." Warlord Vextar nodded slowly. "Yes, I think that would be wise." An hour later, they were back in the conference room. This time, no one made jokes about human weakness. No one mocked Hannah's quiet manner. No one called her soft. She poured tea with the same calm precision as always. But now, everyone knew what those steady hands could do. The negotiations proceeded smoothly. The humans got everything they had asked for, and more. As Hannah updated her files, she made one final note. "Cultural exchange successful. Recommend continued." Diplomatic engagement. Species assessment. Hostile but rational, will respond appropriately to proper incentives. The soft diplomat had completed her mission.